Ken Jennings is best known as the composed, analytical face of Jeopardy, a show built on neutrality, facts, and intellectual restraint. But recently, Jennings stepped outside that familiar role, making political comments online that quickly drew attention, criticism, and support. What he said was brief, but the reaction reveals something much larger about politics, media, and the expectations placed on public figures today. This is State Brief. The story begins on Blue Sky, a newer social media platform that has attracted politically active users from across the spectrum. During a busy political news cycle, Ken Jennings wrote that a future presidential candidate who promises to prosecute the former regime at every level would have his support in 2028. The wording was interpreted by many as a reference to former President Donald Trump and his administration. In a separate post, Jennings criticized the idea of repeated American-led regime change abroad, comparing it sarcastically to a failed New Year's resolution, something Americans return to every year despite repeated disappointment. Individually, these comments might have gone unnoticed, but coming from the host of one of the most recognizable and traditionally apolitical television shows in American history, the response was immediate. For decades, Jeopardy was guided by Alex Trebek, who carefully avoided public political activism. The show became associated not just with trivia, but with neutrality, a rare space where politics stayed off-screen. When Ken Jennings assumed the hosting role, he inherited more than a job title. He inherited an expectation. That's why these comments sparked debate. Critics argue that someone in Jennings' position should avoid political statements altogether, especially when hosting a show watched by millions across political lines. Supporters counter that Jennings is a private citizen, entitled to his opinions like anyone else. This tension between professional role and personal expression is what turned a social media post into a national discussion. This is not the first time Ken Jennings' online activity has drawn criticism. Over the years, he has posted jokes and commentary that many viewed as insensitive or inappropriate. In some cases, those posts resurfaced during the period when he was being considered as a permanent replacement for Alex Trebek. In 2020, Jennings publicly apologized for past tweets, acknowledging that some of his remarks were poorly worded and offensive. He admitted that jokes which made sense in his head did not translate well in public, and expressed regret for the harm caused. That apology was widely seen as an effort to separate his personal online presence from his professional responsibilities, which is why this moment feels different. These were not old comments pulled out of context. They were current, deliberate statements made while serving as the sole host of Jeopardy. But this story is not really about Ken Jennings. It's about a broader shift in American culture. In the past, public figures, especially those associated with neutral institutions, were expected to stay silent on politics. Today, that expectation is fading. Athletes speak out, actors campaign, corporate leaders take political stances. The idea that someone can remain publicly neutral is increasingly rare. So the real question becomes, is neutrality still possible, or even realistic, in a deeply polarized media environment? Or has silence itself become a political statement? Jennings' comments didn't introduce a new political argument. They exposed a cultural divide that already existed. The reason this story resonates is not because of who Jennings criticized, but because of who he represents. He symbolizes intellect, calm, and objectivity. When someone associated with those traits enters political discourse, reactions are amplified. Some viewers feel disappointed. Others feel validated, but the response itself tells us something important. Many audiences still want certain figures to remain above political conflict, even as society moves in the opposite direction. Ken Jennings didn't announce a campaign. He didn't endorse a specific candidate. He shared an opinion. Yet that opinion sparked a debate, not about policy, but about responsibility, public roles, and expectations. And that may be the real takeaway. In today's media landscape, who speaks can matter just as much as what is said. That's the brief.